I think it is fair to say that the most unlikely member of the United States Senate is one Alabama Democratic Senator Doug Jones. Alabama is about as red as it comes. Donald Trump won the state by nearly 28 points. In 2017, Republican Roy Moore eked out a primary victory despite the fact he is an out-and-out theocrat who has no business being in the U.S. Senate. And then, during the general election, the Washington Post published extremely damning and credible allegations of repeated sexual assault and stalking of teenagers. And even with all that, Doug Jones only won over Roy Moore in that 2017 special election by less than 2 percentage points. Since that day, everyone has said to themselves, well, Doug Jones' time in the United States Senate is probably not long for this world. It'll probably end with the general election 2020, which he has to run in. But there is a way that Jones could be reelected, and that is basically if the Republicans implode in a war of infighting in the primary. And that looks like it could happen. Roy Moore is already back in the race, part of a crowded primary field that also includes famous former college football coach Tommy Tuberville. And just a few minutes ago, a new candidate announced he was jumping in. Former Senator and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Now, to be clear, Sessions would probably be a lock to defeat Doug Jones in a general election. He has strong roots in the deep red state, is well liked there, served as an Alabama senator for 20 years. Sessions has one big problem. The president hates his guts, just hates him. And he hates him because just about the only thing that Jeff Sessions did right as Attorney General was to recuse himself from the Russia investigation over his contacts with the Russian ambassador. And ever since then, Trump has blamed Sessions for his plight. On announcing his candidacy just minutes ago, Sessions released an ad seemingly targeted to a man who is not an Alabama voter, but could have a huge impact on his campaign.
Did I write a tell-all book? No. Did I go on CNN and attack the president? Nope. Have I said a cross word about our president? Not one time. The president's doing a great job for America and Alabama, and he has my strong support.
That's the ad. Now, that is probably, I'm just guessing, not going to appease the president. NBC News reports it has been made clear to Sessions that Trump intends to campaign against him. According to the Washington Post, Trump has even joked to senators and White House aides that he would move to Alabama and compete against Sessions himself in the primary, which would be weird and I guess interesting. So now the question is, will the president go to war against perhaps the person most likely to carry the state for Republicans? We could find out on Saturday when Trump will attend the Alabama-LSU football game in Tuscaloosa, which is part of the White House staff's pathetic and obsessive quest to find a single sports venue where Trump won't be booed. After he first faced loud boos at the World Series and then, somewhat amazingly, at a UFC fight. And that may be where Trump goes after Sessions for what Trump views as his disloyalty, and in the process potentially helps Doug Jones extend his unlikely tenure in the Senate at least 6 years longer. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.